Hello everyone and welcome back to the Jamaican Geologist YouTube channel. Today I have a special treat for you, my viewers and subscribers. But first, I want to share a quick story to give you some context. Over 15 years ago, yes, 15 years ago, I'm dating myself here, I was just starting my studies in geology at the University of the West Indies, Mona campus, Jamaica. In my first year, I had to take a course. I think the course was something like igneous and metamorphic petrology or something along those lines. Anyway, I needed a textbook, and I ended up getting one called Mineralogy by a guy named Dexter Perkins. I managed to get in touch with someone, and having gotten in touch with them, I bought the book secondhand. The book was incredibly helpful, very helpful. Over the years, even as a professional geologist, I would still pull it out from time to time whenever I needed a refresher. And this could be like, somebody brought up some strange mineral I didn't know about, or it could be just out of scientific curiosity. Fast forward to last August, I had my first class and I started my PhD program. And I was in the department when I saw a sign on a door that read Dex Perkins. I thought to myself, that name rings a bell. Then I thought, no, it couldn't be. So later I saw a man walk out of the office and I caught up with him in the hallway. I said, hey, you're Dexter Perkins, right? The author of this book. And I showed him a picture of the mineralogy book on my phone. He smiled and he said, yep, that's me. I told him, cool, I have a copy of your book, which I used during my undergraduate degree in geology back in Jamaica. He laughed and said, jokingly, thanks for buying my book. You earned me $2. But you can tell your colleagues not to buy the physical copy anymore. It's all online now for free. And I thought to myself, though, that's very gracious. That's cool. Some weeks later, during one of my wife's visits, she brought my old copy of the book so he could sign it for me. And speaking of my wife, she's a scholar. She has a PhD in the humanities. Specifically, her concentration is the environmental humanities, and she took a real interest in this interview. And I want to extend my sincerest thanks to her for helping to film it. I linked the book and the free online version in the description below. And this encounter for me was kind of serendipitous in a way. It felt like everything sort of came full circle. I bought this book a long time ago, and now I met the guy who wrote it. And as most of you know, I started this channel in January, and I always intended to bring guests on. Well, today I'm excited to say that my very first guest is none other than the Dexter Perkins, author of Mineralogy, a book widely used in geology courses all around the world. Dr. Perkins is a professor of geology at the University of North Dakota, where he has taught for over 45 years, a very long time. His primary research areas include metamorphic petrology and the thermodynamics of mineral systems. So in doing this interview, it was an honor, and my wife was very invested in it as well. So I do hope that you find it as enlightening as I did. And I'll see you all again on Earth Day, April 22nd, when I'll be back with a special feature. So please stay tuned for the interview. So, Dr. Perkins, I'd like to begin by going back to your roots. What sparked your interest in the earth? Were you like some of us geoscientists who loved rocks and minerals as a child?
No, not really, but I did like being outside. And went to a lot of really, really fun places and beautiful places, and so I had a love for nature and outdoors.
Okay, cool. Would you give an overview of your PhD research? Did anything surprise you along the way?
My dissertation research, mostly what I focused on were two things. One was chemical and thermodynamic properties of minerals, and that was just laboratory studies. And it was not outdoors, but it was what I was being paid to do. And that kept me in graduate school for several years. But then as I went on, I found that when I went to meetings, all the people that were seemed to be doing the exciting stuff were working in field areas and collecting samples. So for the second half of my PhD, I started doing field work in Quebec. And I studied some rocks there and made a lot of microscope slides, did a lot of analyses, and ended up publishing a bunch of papers. So that was really exciting. I got outdoors and just had a lot of fun. But originally I was just a laboratory guy.
Cool. Have you always worked in the academy as a scholar and teacher, or did you also have like industry experience?
I spent 1 year working for an oil company, and I did not like it at all. Mostly because it was in Texas, and the climate in Texas was just not anything I ever wanted to deal with. And I also spent 1 semester in law school.
Yeah, I saw that on your profile.
Yeah, but and that wasn't any fun either. But because I was in law school in Ann Arbor at University of Michigan, I met a geologist that I knew who was a professor there, and in 2 minutes he said, "Why don't you drop out of law school and come work for me?" And I said, "Okay."
That's a fun story. I like that. Well, what do you enjoy the most about teaching, though?
Oh, teaching, I enjoy the students. Students they come to the University of North Dakota, and most of them don't know much. I mean, if you get them in an honest moment, they'll tell you they don't know much, but they're going to the university to just try and figure out who they are, what they want to do, maybe figure out a career. And so I get to work with these people that are sitting there really, really wanting to learning how to learn, learning how to think, learning what the world's about, trying to figure out what the next step is in their development, and that's just really exciting.
Yeah. Well, what do you think has been the most challenging thing as a scholar, educator, and how have you coped or overcome those challenges?
The biggest challenge, I think, that we face as educators is time. Students are all different, and they're all different, and they all have different needs, different wants. And I teach several hundred students a semester. And every one of them needs personal attention sometime, or most of them do. And so figuring out how to use my time in the best way possible and to work with every student who needs it, that's always a challenge. And adding to it the fact that some students are very shy about coming and asking for help.
Yes.
And so you get halfway through a semester and some person will come to me and say, "Well, I kind of missed the exam and I didn't turn in the homework. Can I still pass the class?" And that's very common. And so then I have to deal with that. And, and when students are very sincere, I try and work with them. But sometimes I just don't have time.
I understand.
That's the big thing. Time is what it's all about.
But picking back on that question though, have you ever been concerned about the longevity of geology as a discipline or a path to industry? And where do you see geology as a discipline in the next few decades? Because people just think we study rocks and that's it, and it's not very diverse and that sort of stuff. They think it's only oil, and then there's water resources, there's mineral resources, there's disaster management. There's so many facets to geology, but they're just like, I find that back in Jamaica, that what it's been like, and from what I gather here in the United States too, it's similar. So, what's your take on that? Like,
well, first of all, I'd say that I'm a scholar and an academician, right? I'm a college professor.
Yeah.
And our college professors sort of live in our own little world.
Yeah.
And so we study lots of things. And some of them are things that many people care about, like oil supplies.
Yeah.
But some of them might be, garnets from the Ukraine that only 2 people care about, right? I mean, so we have that luxury in academia of being able to study things that are not of great importance. But once you get outside of the academic arena, the big fields today are all in natural resource production and of all sorts, energy resources, mineral resources, big. Population is growing today at a tremendous rate, and demand for resources goes up every year, and production for resources goes up every year, and Earth cannot keep up.
All right.
And geologists more and more are trying to have to figure out clever ways to find new resources and new ways to develop them. That's really the biggest area right now. And then second thing is the environment. We in geology deal with a lot of environmental issues, from things such as water quality and water supplies to waste disposal and a number of other things. But more and more these days, that rush to develop more resources is trumping the environmental concerns. So the environmental jobs used to be huge 10, 20, 30 years ago. There are lots going on in geology. I see that shrinking, even though I don't think it should.
No, absolutely not.
But the fact is we're all in a rush we want more copper. The world relies on copper and we're running out. Right now, copper supplies are maybe 20 years we know of, and that's not very long.
Yeah.
And so that's really where the big push is. And in academia, getting back to universities, a lot of people study other things. But the employment and where our students are going to have to go if they're going to get jobs is going to be in resources mostly.
Yes. And speaking of copper, because I've heard people say that copper is like a green mineral because that's what's going to power our renewable energies in the future. So like the solar panels, the wind turbines, all that stuff.
Anything electrical these days relies on copper.
Yeah.
There's alternatives, but copper is the one we've always used, and it's the one that people seek most.
Yeah. So, following on that question, please debunk 1 or 2 myths about the geosciences you've heard one too many times over the years.
Oh, wow. I don't even know where to begin. Myths, huh? I think maybe the biggest myth or misunderstanding is mostly what I just alluded to.
Yeah.
That is, Earth is finite, and there's only a certain amount of copper we're going to get out of the ground. There's only a certain amount of coal, oil, and gas we're going to get out of the ground. And today, if you listen to people talk, they talk about, well, we just have to look harder, or we just have to invest more money to go develop more resources. And that's just not true. Things are going to become in short supply. And my crystal ball is not perfectly polished. I don't know when.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure in my lifetime, which is not going to be that much longer, that we're going to start seeing shortages of things that we think are absolutely essential. And for a while, we'll be able to substitute other things, right? But eventually, we're going to find that this growing population and growing demand means you don't have this cornucopia. The earth is not always going to provide everything people want.
Yeah.
And that is a very, very significant misunderstanding. Governments need to be aware of it. They won't admit it. Companies need to be aware of it. Investors in companies need to be aware of it. But we're right on the edge of talking about it now. But nobody is really, really willing to accept that reality.
Yes, and that's a good, I like your answer because it segues into my next question, which is, so there's this ongoing debate about like what makes a gem authentic, because we have lab grown gems now. There's moissanite, there's lab grown diamonds, and then from a more industrial standpoint, there's gypsum that they produce from flue gas desulfurization. But that's beside the point. What I'm trying to say is that there's some people that think that mined gems are more valuable than lab grown gems, but the diamond is carbon, right? I mean, it's just the arrangement of the atoms. So, lab-grown diamond versus a diamond that's mined from kimberlites somewhere. So, what's your take on that? Because there's some people that are saying that, like if it's not mined, it doesn't make sense.
Well, people who are real mineralogists, I would call them mineral snobs, would say that if it's not natural, it doesn't count.
Yeah.
But the reality is most of the diamonds sold today are synthetic.
Yeah.
And in fact, most of the gems sold today are synthetic. And in many ways, they're higher quality than the natural ones.
That's true because of inclusions and impurities.
Oh, and impurities and inclusions, I mean, you can make them to be exactly the way you want them.
Yeah.
Or zeolites, which are used a lot in filters and other things like that. Manufactured ones are much better than mining them. And the reality is, mining comes with a whole bunch of environmental costs, where synthesizing gems does not. So I think it's, I appreciate mineral snobs, but for industrial applications and use of minerals, the synthetics are just as good. And they're going to be there, and they're going to be used a lot. Especially as natural resources get depleted, people are going to find it much easier to make their own.
Yeah. So in some places, conservationists and environmentalists are always at odds with like mining companies and so on. And in my personal experience, because I worked in industry for 8 years, someone once said to me that I can't be a geologist and work in the mineral sector and care about the planet. There's some people that say like you can't be a person who's into extractive industries and you can't care about the planet at the same time. The two don't go hand in hand. What's your response to a person like that who says that you can't like be a geologist who works in the extractive industries but at the same time be a person who is like into the planet and caring about it? I get that a lot. I've gotten that a lot over.
Well, I hear that too. And the fact of the matter is there's always trade-offs. If we open up a new mine in North Dakota for rare earth elements, there's going to be environmental costs, right? The deposits in North Dakota are scattered all over. They're not very thick. If we're going to produce appreciable amount of rare earths, we're going to have to dig a lot of holes, okay? And we're going to have to mess up a lot of ground, and you can't avoid it. And so people are really into industrial minerals will say, but we need the rare earths. We have to have them. And people who are really environmentalists and staunch, really, really concerned about the planet, call them tree huggers if you want, will say, no, we don't want to mine at all because it's going to cause all this damage. Well, the reality is you got trade-offs, right?
Yeah.
Either you're going to have them, you're not going to have them, or you're going to be somewhere in between and you're going to decide what the balance is. And my personal feeling is that we've gone way too far towards resource extraction and development, and that's why demand goes up every year, because we've forgotten about the consequences of developing all these resources and the downside, like global warming, right?
Yeah.
Burning fossil fuels is causing a big problem, but we burn more every year. I think the reality is something's going to happen in the future, and we're going to be forced to confront these problems, but we have not been doing it very well. But it's always a balancing act, and it's not a question of switching. I mean, if you don't want to burn coal, oil, and gas as an energy source, well, you can go to wind and solar, but they're not free.
Yeah.
Right? It takes resources to develop wind and solar energy, and it takes up land, and nothing is free. I think the problems that we get into are when you have someone that is such a strong resource development person that they forget about the consequences of what they're doing, or the other way around. You get somebody who's such a big environmentalist, concerned about the environment, but he drives an F-150, and his gasoline's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
And so people do not even turn around and think about what the other person is saying.
Yeah.
They just write it off. They write it off as wrong.
Yeah. And that's where the problem lies. But you are one of the world's leading mineralogists. But I'm curious though, are there any other subdisciplines of the geosciences that you were interested in or still are interested in?
Well, when I was in graduate school, as I told you, I was studying the thermodynamics and chemical properties of minerals.
Yeah.
And I was one of a very small number of people that were at the cutting edge of that. That was when you don't know this because you're a punk, but that was before we had computers in every office, okay? And so anytime you did chemical and thermodynamic calculations, it was on a piece of paper with a pencil. But right when I was in graduate school, we started getting access to computers. We had to use punch cards, but all of a sudden we could start doing calculations that weren't possible prior to that. And I was on the cutting edge of that for 20 years. Today, people don't seem to care much about that. A lot of the most significant discoveries have already been made in that area of chemical properties of minerals, and not much in the way of very significant stuff has been discovered in the last, several decades.
Yes.
But in the 1970s, that was a cutting edge field, and it was really, really exciting, and computers made it possible.
Yeah.
I mean, I came to the University of North Dakota 45 years ago. Nobody had a desktop computer, but 5 years later, I had one, and then I could do all my computational stuff right here at my desk. It wasn't a very fast computer. Some stuff took overnight, but it was possible. Those are exciting times.
Yeah. But share with us some of your 5 of your favorite minerals. We're going a little lighter now. 5 of your favorite minerals.
I like all minerals that are beautiful and spectacular. And you may, as part of this interview, want to step outside and fill my display case.
I always look at it all the time.
Yeah, well, we can even open it for you if you want to get in closer.
Oh, nice.
But if they're beautiful minerals, I love them. I did my master's thesis studying garnet, and it happens to be my birthstone.
Were you born in January?
Yeah.
Oh, my mom's born in January.
Yeah. But so maybe that's my favorite, but there's so many of them. And kyanite. Kyanite's such a beautiful mineral.
That's the one that's a knife shape.
Blue knife blade type.
Yeah.
It's just spectacular to look at. More recently, I've gotten excited by the mineral lawsonite, which you've probably never heard of. But it's rocks that contain lawsonite came from very, very deep in Earth. And it's a mineral that's been overlooked for a long time. So my wife and I have taken 4 trips to California in the last 2 years to collect rocks that contain lawsonite. It's fascinating, but it's not beautiful. It's just scientifically very, very significant, but they're all my favorite, Yeah. How could you not like pyrite? Fool's gold, right?
I have one at home.
Yeah, golden cubes, they sparkle and they shine.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, my final question, because I know you're a busy man. So if there's anyone listening who is passionate or at the very least interested in the earth sciences, what's your advice to them? Because for me personally, I've gotten backlash over the years, it's not something you should look into because, the job prospects or, what are you going to do with it after you're finished? But what's your advice to a young person, like an 18, 19-year-old, thinking that they should do something
I
else?
think right now, job opportunities in earth sciences are huge. Okay? I know of no student that graduated that was sincerely looking for a job that didn't get one for the last 10 years. There's some students that they're sitting here in Grand Forks, North Dakota, and they can't find a job. Well, yeah, you got to go where the jobs are, right?
Yeah.
But with that said, there's unlimited employment. I have a student that works at a gold mine in Nevada. He's constantly, 5 times a year, emailing me saying, "You got any students that would like to come out here and work this summer? Because we'll train them to be gold geologists. We just need to get people here so we can train them." And he's told me, he said, we train 5 people and 2 of them will come back and take permanent jobs. And that's good. Yeah. That's what keeps our industry. It's like that across the board. Oil companies, not as much. They used to be the place where everybody went. But even there's employment. So earth scientists, there's just lots and lots and lots of employment. And if you don't get a job working for a mineral resource company, you work for a state regulatory agency, or there's just jobs all over. And it's a great thing. And you get to go outside, and they pay you to go to exotic places that you wouldn't maybe get to on your own. And it's got everything going for it.
Yeah. For me, I think a lot of people are sitting in Kingston, Jamaica, or wherever, and sometimes being a geologist, you have to leave your own country.
If you're into minerals, you do probably, or not entirely. I mean, in the United States, we have huge gold mining in Nevada. But Nevada, is not for everybody. Some people go out there and say, gosh, it's hot and dry and dusty and far away from anything, which is true. Some people may not want to be there. But a lot of companies, if you're into metals, you're going to be traveling the globe, right? And what the standard pattern I've seen with my students is they spend the first 5 or 10 years of their career traveling around if they're into mining. And then they get brought home to the home office and they become upper level administrator, and then they don't travel as much. And that seems to work out really well because that usually corresponds to when they get a family and start having kids or, But anyway, employment is there for anybody that wants it now.
Yeah, you just have to know where to look.
It's easy. It's easy to find jobs.
All right, so that's it. Thank you for, sparing me some time for this. I was kind of wondering, you're a busy man, so if you could make some time in your schedule, and I really appreciate it.
Well, I don't mind talking to you at all. I mean, as you know, I'm really into education, and I've published a bunch of books on the internet recently, which are incredibly popular.
Yeah.
And in part, it's because of the computer skills I have. Other people could do it, or also I'm really senior. I'm over 70 years old. I'm past retirement age. And I have time to do these things. Whereas somebody who's just starting out in a career, if they don't write grant proposals and publish scientific papers, their career won't go anywhere. So the luxury is when you get to be my age, you can do things that other people can't.
I still pull from your book from time to time, even after all of these years.
Yeah. And you'll notice that print book that you have, half of it is pretty much identical to what's on my free online book.
Yeah.
But on the free online one, I expanded a lot.
Yeah, you do. And as you said, you update it regularly, so.
I do. And the other thing you get with that book is online textbooks like that. I have thousands of free critics. All the other mineralogists and geologists around the world, nobody's shy, right?
Yeah.
When they see something they don't like or they think it's wrong, they tell me. And then I have to decide whether to fix it the way they want or not. Most of the time they're right, but sometimes somebody just thinks that, tungsten is the most important element in the universe, and I didn't say that. And, well, maybe I won't do it his way.
Tungsten isn't it in light bulbs, like incandescent lamps?
And a lot of steel.
Like stainless steel?
I'm not sure it's stainless, but hard steels. Yeah. But anyway, that's one of the beauties of publishing on the internet.
Yeah.
Free editors.